Are you a sex worker looking to build a new website or a website redesign? Then you'll want to consider Fox Digital. They did a fantastic job designing my website, Stripped by Sia. If you want your website done, mention that you're a listener of the show at foxdigital.design for 20% off. Tell them I sent ya. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia, aka Kimchi on stage. I'm taking a wee little break for the holidays. I think I'll probably be back in the new year at some point where you can come see me live. And at that point, I will let you know when those dates and clubs are. Other than that, I am an OnlyFans model and creator and was a sugar baby for a few years. And you could hear about all those experiences if you want to learn about me personally in some bonus episodes earlier in season 1, 2, and 3. But for now, this is all about destigmatizing sex work. So if you're brand new here, it's kind of my mission to do that by bringing different guests on from the adult industry specifically, and providing a platform where they can share their stories, their lived experiences without any kind of censor, and also basically with a transparent lens, because I just feel like a lot of times our stories are told by people or folks who are not in our industry, like the media, like journalism, like a lot of people that have never stepped foot in our lives. So I want to be able to do that. And I've been running the show for the past few years, and just want to say thank you for everyone who's been listening. It's been a wild ride, and I appreciate the support, as well as my paying subscribers on Patreon. Big shout out and thank you to those folks that are up on there. Just going to give a quick little shout out to those who are on the second and top tier of the Patreon. So hello to Snoo all the way from Germany. We have Jay Suncern from here, British Columbia, lovely British Columbia. Justin Erickson, who is from Washington, Vancouver, Washington, actually. Arif Sarkar, who is also from Vancouver. And of course, shouting out to the newer subscribers that are on there that I actually don't know where your locations are, but hello to Selena Money and Ted McGuire. Thank you so much. Just know that all of your money has gone to building my lovely website, which is what we will actually be talking about today. Not my website in particular, but the wonderful genius behind it, Anthony, who is from Fox Digital, who created my website and also creates many websites for those who are in the full service sex industry. But of course, a lot of people do ask about websites, where to get started and whatnot. So this episode is going to be all about that. But yeah, big shout out there. And also lastly, shout out to Skyhawk After Dark. It is a network of podcasts and videocasts from adult creators, performers, and talent, and those who are even behind the scenes as well. So be sure to check that out, skyhawkafterdark.tv. And with that being said, I'm really trying to keep that under 3 minutes. I'm so excited to bring on today's guest, as briefly mentioned, Anthony, who reached out to me a year and a half ago asking to collab, and I'm like, okay, let's do this. It's finally time. We have time to get you on the show. We've worked on the lovely website. It's almost ready, December 1st, but I'm reaching for. But yes, as mentioned, we're talking about the online, we're talking about digital, we're talking about marketing, we're talking about SEO, we're talking about website, and how this is so important, especially in my opinion, for those who run full service as their primary line of business. A lot of this information, however, can be transfer to other forms of sex work too. But just keep this in mind that he specifically works with a lot of like escorts. So just wanted to keep that in mind in case you're like, this doesn't apply to me. Well, yeah, I mean, just take it with a grain of salt. But without further ado, because I've been rambling on for now 4.5 minutes. Hello, Anthony.
Hey, Sia, how's it going? Should I do my intro for another 4.5 minutes? Just your intro, then my intro. Okay, thanks everybody. See ya.
We're done here. I'm a little bit rusty. I haven't like podcasted in a while, and like I feel like, oh my god, I have so many more things to like squish in now. But I'm excited to have you on. Did I do okay for your intro? I did like it was so
Oh,
small.
that's fantastic.
I feel like you're so much more. Like you were also like a former podcast host many years ago too, and like you've been in marketing and digital design for what, a decade now?
Oh yeah, a decade. I
Over?
was a small business owner in Vancouver for a decade, and then I sold that, and I traveled around, Europe and Asia for a bit, and that's when I kind of transitioned to the digital world. And now I'm temporarily back in Canada, and plotting what country I want to live in next.
When are you planning? Do you have an idea, or is it just all up in the air?
Yeah, I was gonna go to Europe last year. I want to move back to Europe, and I was gonna go to Europe. I was actually gonna move to like Bulgaria, but then the
Oh,
whole Russia started going a little bit crazy, and Bulgaria is pretty close to Russia, and so I
yeah.
thought, for now it's probably better to be on this side of the pond, this side of the Atlantic Ocean. But I think hopefully that the situation gets settled up soon, and yeah, I'd like to move. I lived in Europe before, and so I'd like to move back there. um,
Cool.
Maybe Portugal or something like that, where it's nice and sunny all the time. I like to ride
Yeah.
motorcycles, so in Vancouver
Yeah.
we have a very short riding season. So
Yeah, and you just came back from a long motorcycle trip, didn't you? Like
yeah, I
before.
just went trip around the United States 3 weeks, and so I'm editing that video right now, and hopefully get to
Cool.
release it soon.
Well, I can't wait to see that. And also my butt hurts just thinking about a 3-week motorcycle trip. Like it's super fun. I mean, I'd love to continue talking about your motorcycle trip and travels and everything, but I know we want to get into the nitty gritty of everything that is website design, and also like just how important it is and how that can be a really great driving factor to gain more clients, to get business and stuff too, which is a main bulk of this episode. Because I have done some like really brief like digital marketing, like really general, scratching the surface, but we're gonna get into like some technical details here, which I think is still really important, even if like you're not super savvy on that. If like I'm sure that you're kind of gonna like break it all down for us today. But before we kind of get into all those minute details, I really want to, and also the audience would like to know like where it all began for you. Like, how did you get into marketing, and how did you get to working with sex workers specifically?
Well, like I mentioned, I was a small business owner before, and I kind of sold my business right kind of when digital and internet was really starting to take off. And so I'd always kind of dabbled in that a little bit. And then I took off for a while and took a bit of a holiday for a few years. And then when I kind of got back into the digital world, started to look at that, kind of as opportunities, what I saw was that a lot of misinformation out there. And, especially as a small business owners, we can't afford to make a lot of mistakes. Right, big company, you make a mistake, you can write it off, no big deal. Small business owner, you make a mistake. I have a client who spends $6,000 on a website. He hasn't had a single inquiry on his website in 2 years.
Ah,
And he can't afford to lose $6,000. Right, he has no sales, no inquiries, no nothing. So that's not a mistake that small business owners can make too many times.
mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I'm very good at kind of explaining the technical aspect of internet marketing, digital marketing in a way that small business owners can understand, because I was one of these people before. And that's where I kind of transitioned into that. That's what my primary work is. Most of my clients, small business owners who ironically, they always find me after they've spent a ton of money somewhere else, and I'm always like cleaning up their problems, which is kind of annoying. Like I wish they would just come to me before, but they're always like, "I wish I knew you before." I'm like, "Me too," but and then yeah, so then I started looking at sex work because I met a photographer who does like boudoir photography and all that, and then I kind of looked at a few women's websites, and I thought, well, I mean, it doesn't look that great. But then what kind of really caught my attention was when I looked online for like escort website design services, and I looked at all the services that were being offered, and these look horrible. Like,
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
showed you one of them, and I loved your comment. You said it looks like something from a GeoCities page, and I'm like, yeah, like if you don't know what GeoCities is, then you shouldn't be buying like any design services at all. And if like
Yes.
that's seriously ancient in internet terms. And
Yes.
so
That
I
those are
was,
like 9.
yeah, like that's really bad. So I felt kind of bad because I thought, these women and these men who are buying these services, they're really not getting what they should be getting, right? They're paying for something that's out of date, out of style, and worse than that, it doesn't work, right? Your website should have a specific business goal. And if you're hiring someone who's creating you GeoCities era stuff, it's not going to work. So that's when I decided to kind of reach out to a few different escorts and say, hey, you know what? I can make you a better website. And they kind of passed the word around. And then I ended up meeting the ladies who run the Naked List website. I built their website for them. And they are 3 ladies who wanted to provide escort or like advertising website similar to Leo List, but run by sex workers. So I
Right.
built their 2 sites, the Naked List and the Naked Truth. And the Naked Truth is their kind of blog site. Naked List is their listing site.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, and that's kind of how it evolved from there.
Wow, that's amazing. And like word of mouth is really, really powerful too. And especially like within our community too. Like we really run through with like referrals and people that are trusted. Because there are like, well, one, there are so many platforms that you can use to build your website, which we'll get into later. Some which are like free services, build your own like templated stuff, or like getting into more of the custom kind of work, which I always kind of like stray towards. But I mean, going back to some of the examples that you had showed me, it like it just there's a disconnect there. And what I mean by that is just like if your website is looking like old and outdated and just like not from this era,
This
like
century?
century, like I don't know, like as a potential client, I don't know if I would be inclined to book with someone that like is this even still relevant? Like, is this even still up and running? Like, to me, it
Yeah.
doesn't have that polished, professional kind of feel to it. And I understand that having a website and the cost of like running that and maintaining that is a privilege, and not everyone can afford to do that. But there's definitely some worthy ways that we can kind of, put your presence on digitally, and also like there are different tiers of like accessibility in terms of like affordability and whatnot. But yeah, like I just feel like the aesthetic should match the person,
Yeah.
right?
And also, too, is like one thing that I've heard a lot from my clients is that when what the feedback they get from their clients is many times it's that I chose your business because I like the look of your website.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just that potential clients basically just comparing the visuals and the look and the aesthetic of your website versus your competitors. And if your website looks better, then they'll choose you. And that's actually it's something I hear quite a bit. It's kind of strange to me that consumers would make a decision just based on the visuals, but I mean it happens a lot. So um, your look of your website is really important, but the danger to that is that you yourself might not be the best person to decide if your website looks good or not. Because I've had
Mm.
some clients, I had one client, she was so proud of her website that she designed. And I told her, I said, well, I mean, if you like it, that's great, but your website looks out of date. It's an old 2000s era design. But she
Mm-hmm.
doesn't know that because her thinking about the internet kind of is around 2000 era. So in her mind, it's up to date, but it's not. So it's really kind of difficult to sometimes tell clients like, hey, what you think looks good may not look good, and more than that is it may not work, because a lot of times people make the mistake of like thinking like web design is how it looks. And that's just
Mm-hmm.
part of it.
That's
But
part of
as a
it.
business owner, you have to be looking at, does it work? And
Yeah.
what is the goal of the website? If your goal of your website, like you mentioned, most of my clients are escorts, so their goal of their website is to get inquiry,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the only goal of the website, is to get inquiry. They need the person to come to the website, fill out that contact form to book that appointment. That's the goal. And so no matter what it looks like, if it's not accomplishing that goal, we need to change some things. And
Totally.
you may not like the design, you may be like, I don't like it or whatever, but if it's working and you got money coming in your pocket, then hey, it's all good. If it's not working, you may love it, but it's time to change it. So
Totally. And sometimes that can be a hard conversation for some people when they get so attached to a certain design, or they've had something for like a long time. There's like an emotional attachment to that. But
yeah,
honestly, like you kind of like hit the nail on the head there, is like, and like driving it down to like functionality and like how people navigate your site. Like all of that is super, super important. It's not just about the design.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, in our industry, I feel like a lot of people, or a lot of clients are very visual.
yeah.
And unfortunately, like the judging a book by its cover kind of can ring true in our industry.
But that can also work to your advantage though, because like if you're new to the industry, you're brand spanking new, right? And you're thinking like, well, I'm brand new, I don't have experience, I'm going to charge a lower rate. Well, you don't necessarily have to do that, because you could create a website that looks like you could command $1,000 an hour. Now, you may not be able to actually perform that and fulfill that. You may be nervous or whatever, right? But that's something that you need to work on. But you could be brand spanking new, but create a website that looks like you're like $1,000 an hour, and the client won't know any difference. They'll look at that and go, wow, this looks great, and they, book, and you got $1,000 an hour client. So
True.
the interesting thing about the internet is like you can kind of, basically fake it till you
Like
make
for me,
it.
I was
And
just
it's
gonna
just
say that.
then it's up to you to kind of be that $1,000 an hour sex worker, right? So
Totally. Yeah, fake it
that's
till
a
you make it. And I mean, like it's marketing at its core. It's like this looks really good. This makes me want to buy it. This makes me
yeah.
want to like, get the service and whatnot. So, and we'll talk about some marketing tactics later on as well. But why don't we start at step one in terms of like, getting a website? What do you have to do? What platforms are good? What's bad? And maybe we can start with the conversation around like build your own websites and like pre-made templates and stuff like that
Yeah.
first, and
Okay.
then
So
we go from there.
I just, for your viewers, I got my notes to the side here, so that's why I'm looking off to the side. But okay, so uh, I mean, like once again, most of my clients are escorts, so that's kind of what my understanding is. If you're camming or you're doing OnlyFans or you're doing something else, some of you may not necessarily need a website per se, because your objectives are different. If you're OnlyFans, if you're only doing OnlyFans, then your objective is just get people on that platform, right? So um, but my background is kind of helping escorts get clients. So you need to have a website. You need to have a presence online. Specifically, you need to have a presence online that you can control.
Mm-hmm.
And in this industry, this is really important, because at any given moment, whatever happens in society or whatever, your content that you don't control, meaning like if you're on like social media or like Squarespace or other things, your content could be taken down, right? And if you don't have an online presence you control, you basically can disappear. And one thing I tell all my clients is, it's a really good idea to have multiple ways that you can connect with clients, and your clients can connect with you. If your website goes down, you've got a different email address. If your email goes down, you've got social media that they can contact you with. So because the industry is what it is, and it's volatile due to regulations and other, like you said, other people's interference. It's good to have a presence where you control your narrative and your brand image and your connection with your clients and all that. So that's why I think like one, having a website is really important,
Right.
more important than having like social media and whatnot.
I will
Um,
quickly jump in here and say that, yeah, like with so many social media accounts, like Instagram going down or your page getting deleted or suspended, that could also happen with your clip sites too. If you go post something against their terms and services, and remember the whole thing with OnlyFans, like threatening to shut down a couple of years ago too. Like that's the whole thing.
yeah.
Another way that like we're stressing the importance of like having your own website is a really great thing because that, as you mentioned, that's something you can control. So regardless if you are in full service or not, like I still think it's super, super useful depending, like it doesn't even really matter what type of sex work you do. Um, I just wanted to pop in there and say that.
Yeah,
But
like having
sorry.
some type of presence online, because the thing is like, the thing, the situation with OnlyFans, the rumor was it wasn't their decision, it was the bank's decision.
Right.
Right. And the bank said we're not going to process these payments anymore. And that's a huge issue in your industry. PayPal won't do it. And so how do you get paid? Right. And so yeah, like you could spend a lot of time and money building up a large OnlyFans account. And if you're relying on that and then suddenly something beyond your control removes that, then you're kind of stuck, right?
Yeah.
So having a website online allows you to have a little bit more control over your presence on the internet and specifically your communication with potential customers and your core fan base and all that.
Right.
Um, so whenever people ask about websites online, the question always comes up like, should I go with something like Squarespace or Wix or Weebly or any of these other what they call like templated websites, or should I like build my own website? And there's pros and cons of both. And to kind of quickly, kind of summarize it, is that like I'll use Squarespace as an example, but when I say Squarespace, I mean Wix and Weebly and all these other ones that you can kind of just drag and drop stuff into. Um, the main benefit those is they're a lot easier to create your website because they're designed for people with no experience, whatever. You just drag photos in, type some text, hit publish, and boom, you got a website. So it's super, super simple. Versus building your own website, you need to either hire someone like me or hire a designer and a coder, and you need to find hosting, and there's a little bit more technical involved in it. I feel though that route is a better option because Squarespace, if you look at their terms of service, they say you're not allowed to have any obscene content on your website.
Right.
Now, what's obscene? They don't even define it. But what can happen is something goes wrong, and the media gets someone posts something bad and the media goes bananas and, oh my God, Squarespace is supporting prostitution or whatever. They don't
Right.
want that bad PR. They do a quick search for their database of any escort related keywords and they just delete everybody's account like that.
Yeah.
And with the one keystroke, your business is gone and everything's gone. You have no recourse to that whatsoever. Wix, all those ones are the same. So it's all okay until it's not okay, and then you're basically screwed.
Yeah.
With your own personal website, like the self-hosted website, you're less likely that's going to happen because you're obviously more in control. And two, without trying to get too technical, but the hosting company is a company that hosts all your files for your website, like your photos and text and all that. And it's best to choose kind of an offshore company and a relatively small company. And the reason for that is because, there's that America, there's that SESTA, FOSTA thingy that, it's that legislation and all that. Well, that legislation targets big companies like Squarespace and all that. It's easy for them to target that. It's much harder for them to find little Tom's hosting company in the Netherlands. And, because there's thousands, millions of hosting companies on the internet. So you're basically just going to hide out there. And worst case scenario, if something happened to that, it's not hard to then just move your site to another small hosting company, almost like that. You should have a backup copy of your site. I have backup copies of my client's website. If the hosting company ever went down, I could have everybody's site up in 24 hours.
Right.
Now, it's a bit technical to try to do all that kind of stuff, but if your business is really relying upon having that website up and running and you need that website up and running, no risk to it whatsoever, that's a better option. Is spend a bit of money in the beginning, get the proper website set up, get hosting set up, make sure hosting is overseas, like Singapore, Netherlands, places like that. And then have a backup option, have your backup files on your computer or whatever, so that if it does go down, unlikely, you can just put it up. It's like that game of whack-a-mole, basically. Remember that the fair game, like this? Like it's basically that's what it is with the government. So if the government shuts one down, you just go to another one.
Right.
And the thing is, like these small hosting companies are so many and so hard to find. And it's not worth the government's time to go after something like that. So you're just like, I'll just pop it up over here. So that's the kind of the big differences I see between like Squarespace and Wix and a self-hosted website is that, yes, it's much easier to set up a website on those ones. Much easier. You can do it yourself.
Right.
However, just know that you run the risk of your website getting taken down if anything happens. They get bad PR or whatever beyond your control. You probably won't even have anything to do with you. Someone will post something obscene, the media get hold of it, and then just shut everybody's down. So that's the risk that you have with like a site like Squarespace or something like that.
Totally. I mean, like I am a Squarespace client for my personal website, but there's nothing really on there that is going against their terms and services. And I will say it is very easy to use. And maybe it's a good stepping stone for you to like potentially get started, just to have some presence on there until you can afford to get something on your own. But honestly, like with all the costs, because everything's built in with Squarespace, their costs are definitely higher. So just keep that in mind as well. So if you're trying to like think about like, oh, okay, well, if I go custom, then it's going to cost this much. But then if I just do something with myself in Squarespace, it'll only cost this. But those customizations, the more you add to your Squarespace account, does add up. So it might just be good to go with WordPress.
And those companies like Squarespace, what they do is that they make it very hard for you to leave their platform.
Yes.
So, it's challenging to like back up your website or to change your files or change your domain name or anything like that. And also too is like, like you said, like if you wanted to say add a store, like you wanted to sell t-shirts or something like that, that's an extra feature that you have to pay for Squarespace to add that. So you have to figure out the cost of, okay, that's going to cost X amount per month. And then, versus if you have your own website, there's a lot of kind of semi-free services that you can just add to your website.
Right. Yeah. And usually it's like a one-time fee, but Squarespace is like a subscription. So just like keep that in mind.
Yeah. So it really just depends on, like say yourself and your technical abilities and kind of, it's really challenging though, because it's like, if you don't know the technical side, who do you trust in this industry? Do you go to that GeoCities lady that we showed you and like, or like who do you trust? Right. So, so it might be not a bad idea to start on a site like Squarespace, kind of get familiar with the whole internet, running a website. And then perhaps later on, if you're starting to get some business from it, then later on transition to like your own website or something like that, custom website.
Yeah, good stepping stone. But why don't we go into like step 2 in terms of like choosing a domain? What's the importance with that?
Okay. Yeah. So the domain name or your stage name, what I've found is that of all of my clients, when I look at the traffic that they get, and this has a little bit to do with SEO, which I believe I covered in here at the end there. But one of the challenges that one of the biggest search query that what people type in is their name.
Mm-hmm.
So, trying to make this as simple as possible. Like SEO is basically just optimizing your website for Google. So when someone types in, like, say, Vancouver Escort, you want your website to come up to the top because obviously, the top 5 get clicked on the most. The problem is any type of keyword, any type of term that revolves around sex work has been dominated by large porn sites.
Mm-hmm.
So if I search like Vancouver Escort, the Pornhub or any of the sites are going to come up and like, here's all of it. Vancouver Escort does this and this or whatever. Like those sites dominate all that. So it's really hard for you as a small website to try to rank within that, to try to be found within that. But what I've found is that for my clients, many of the search terms that people are using to find their website is their name. And I suspect this is because they're reading reviews online, or maybe they found them on social media or whatever. So they're trying to find where this person is online. And so they're searching their name.
Mm-hmm.
So your stage name and slash domain name, domain is like the .com, something, something.com. Those two should be the same. But what you want to do is you want to make it a name that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world.
Right.
And the reason for this is that if you pick a name, say you have an author, an 18th century author that you love, Florence Heatherstone Nightingale or something like that. You're like, oh, I love that name. I'm going to choose that name. Well, the problem is Google doesn't love sex work.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It shows it, but it's kind of So if your name matches some historical figure, public figure, or someone with some kind of internet presence, Google's going to show their content first, well before they'll show your content. So even if that person's long gone or whatever, you're going to have a hard time ranking against them because Google prefers that type of content versus sex work content.
Right.
So I know some of the clients, they like to choose names that are kind of famous celebrities or like kind of a variation of a celebrity or whatever, right? But it's gonna be really hard for people to find you, because even if you take a celebrity's name and you change a bit of the spelling a little bit, Google has that autocorrect. So it's going to show you the auto-corrected version. Like, did you mean this? And it's going to show you that, right? So it's better to have a stage name and a domain name that doesn't exist anywhere else in the internet, so that when people search for that, Google has no other choice but to show your content. See a Toad Pants sewing machine or something like that. Like, I don't know, like just something like really, really crazy.
Yeah.
Because there's like no possibility that someone else is going to have the name See a Toad Pants sewing machine, right? Like that would be nuts. So pick something like really crazy like that, because then when people search, your stuff will come up and no one else's stuff will come up.
Such good advice. Yeah, that's super, super key, especially for those listening. I know there's a lot of people that listen to the show that are just like doing the research before they get started and take the plunge. So some sound advice for you listeners.
Yeah, this is more for people who are brand new, like if you've got a name already, like I wouldn't recommend changing it unless if you have a large audience, then don't change it. But if your audience is not as big, then you could consider changing it. But yeah, if you're kind of getting new and you're thinking about like what should be my stage name, like do a search first. Like, I can make a list of them, and then search online to see like, is that available? Is there any famous person or anything with that name? And if there's not, then grab it, and register that domain name, and then you'll be fine. And then try to use the same domain, like name, across all your social media as well. Like everything so your .com is the same name as your Twitter, your Instagram, OnlyFans, et cetera, is all that same. So when someone searches, all of that stuff will come up.
Questions for you: is .com better than like other endings as well, like .ca, .co, how would you answer
not so
that?
much anymore. There's like not so much anymore. If you take a look at kind of even like the Google, the browsers and all, they're starting to kind of remove a lot of that the domain names there. So it's not so much anymore. It's more about what is easy for people to remember.
Right.
If you have some crazy .pizza or something that's hard to kind of people remember, then it's it's going to be challenging. But the .com is the easiest one for people to remember. It's easy. It's the cheapest one to register as well. So yeah, like my one is like .design. I thought that was so clever, like Fox Digital .design. I thought, yeah, design. It's like $45 a year to register. Whereas the .com is like $15. I was like, what?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, try to pick a name that's like not out there anywhere, and one that's fairly easy for people to remember. And because that .com will be available. Just consider that almost every word in the dictionary that ends in .com is taken. So you look up a random word in the dictionary, that .com is probably taken, and every single combination of like 4 letters is taken. So aztp.com is probably already taken. So all that's taken. So try to think of something that's super rare, and then grab that .com, and you'll be fine.
There we go. One more question before I move on. Where are the best places, or how do you determine the best places to register your domain? Because there's so much out there. Like, would you go the same route as like finding the small guy and
Yeah,
going that route?
yeah, good question there. What I recommend is I personally use a company called Enom. Let me see here.
We could put
What's
that
the
in
other
the show
one?
notes.
Yeah, what was the other one that there's another one. I have to get back to you. What's the
Yeah,
other
that's
one?
okay. Send me your notes
No,
later. I'll put it
Namecheap. I
in
think
the
it's Namecheap. Is it Namecheap? Yeah, name. No, it's not Namecheap. Sorry, I'll have to get back. Yeah, there's another company that I recommend. I've recommended to a few of my clients. I recommend having your domain registered different than your hosting company, because if one goes down, then once again you still got that. Um, once again I do recommend kind of going with the smaller companies. Don't go with like GoDaddy, or don't go with any companies you advertise on Super Bowl ads or anything like that, because you're paying for those Super Bowl ads, right? Like they want to hook you in with low prices and then get you in. And then one thing that GoDaddy has been known to do is that if you go to GoDaddy.com and they'll say like, hey, register your name, check if it's available. So you type in, CS, stretchypants.com, whatever. Hey, it's available, but I'm going to think about that for a bit. Then you come back the next day and it's registered. And then GoDaddy sends you an email saying, hey, we registered this for you. Did you want to buy it?
Mm-hmm.
And you can buy it through us. And like, oh, you sneaky bastards. Like, so yeah,
We're known
I
for
would
that.
go with a smaller company. I can send you the links to the one. I just can't remember off the top of my head what it was now. I use this company called Enom, and that's a little bit for larger, like for someone like me, it registers a lot of domains. But there's another company I used to use. They're actually, I think they're based in Canada. I'll send that
Yeah,
to you as well.
send me later. That's cool. Cool. I mean, sorry for the side tangents, but I just had to ask.
No, yeah.
But why don't we go into like the fundamentals of like a good website design, and like what do you consider as like quote unquote good?
Okay, so this is something I alluded to earlier, is that a lot of times when people think of website design, they think of how it looks. And I
Mm-hmm.
think people in the sex industry, especially because it's them, right? They're the content, so they want the site to look as good as it can be. But what you need to think about isn't so much how it looks, but how it works. And what is the objective of your website? If your website is to get inquiry, then that should be the whole function of the website. It should be designed so that wherever people land on the site, that they get directed to that inquiry form. And you have to think that the thing with Google nowadays is that Google doesn't care about your entire website. You can test this. Do a search for like iPhone cases, and you'll see the first result is from Apple, but it's not apple.com. It's like apple.com shop something iPhone something case. It's a web page deep within Apple's website. That's what Google's trying to show you. Google wants to show you the best result for your search query. And it doesn't care whether it's like a paragraph within the page or like it's an image or a video or whatever. It doesn't care about like where it is. It just wants to show you that piece of information.
Right.
So what can happen is someone searching for, say, escorts in Vancouver, Google shows them maybe your contact page, because on your contact page you have the keyword like Vancouver or something like that, because you may not have Vancouver on like your rates page or your gallery or something. So
Right.
it's your contact page or your etiquette page or something like that. So don't think that people are going to land on your homepage and look at all your gorgeous photos and then check out all your other pages and then like, oh, I'm going to contact you. Like, that's not the journey that people go on anymore.
Right.
They could start anywhere in your website, because you don't know what page Google thinks is the most relevant for that particular search query. So it's
Right.
important that wherever they land, they're able to transition from that piece of content to what you want them to do, which is the contact form, as quickly and easily as possible.
Right.
So that's the number one thing you have to think about, is don't think of it as like a brochure that people are going to flip through the whole thing and be like, wow, this is great. Think of it like a map. Like,
Yeah.
you're searching for something. Here's map of my website, and here's the answer, and here's what I want you to do next. Come here.
Right.
And
Yeah.
anything that kind of makes that process difficult is detrimental to you as a business owner, because it can potentially cost you money. For example, a lot of people like to put their social media links on their website.
Hmm.
But ask yourself, before you do that, ask yourself, do I make money by people contacting me on my inquiry form? Or do I make money by people following me on Instagram? I
Right.
mean, yeah,
That's a
sure, it
good
might feel good to have a lot of followers on Instagram. Yeah, it feels good, but that's not paying your rent. You can have lots of followers on there, but if you're not getting paid, you're eating, top ramen noodles at the end of the month, right? So
question. That's
you
me.
get paid when, yeah, you're looking at your YouTube channel like, what's noodles should I eat this month? Like got 10 million followers on Instagram and I'm eating noodles. Um, so you have to ask yourself, like, okay, how do I get paid? What's my cash register? My cash register is my contact form. That's the goal. That's the next step in the process that I want the clients to take. So anything that takes them away from that is detrimental to your business. Now, should you not have your social media links on your website? Not necessarily. You can put them on your website, put them in the bottom of the footer, whatever, but they should be kind of low priority. Last thing, if people look everywhere and they're not interested, fine, go follow me on Instagram, and then maybe you'll come back later. But that customer journey is really important for everybody to understand. And that customer journey overrides the aesthetics of the website to some degree. And I'll give you an example. A lot of my clients, they love to have thousands of photos of themselves on their website.
Okay.
They love having huge honking galleries of like lots and lots and lots of photos. But what is the objective of the photo? The objective of the photo is to entice the client enough for them to want to make an inquiry, right? So the more photos you have, the less effective they become. Because as an individual photo, it loses its effectiveness. It becomes this gallery now, it becomes this huge thing. And clients are like scrolling through all this. You might even run the risk that the client scrolled through everything and their enthusiasm goes down.
Right.
Or maybe they're like, okay, maybe come back later or something like that.
Yeah.
So adding lots and lots of photos, and especially photos like selfie photos.
Oh.
If you hire a photographer and you've got these fantastic photos on your website, and then you start uploading like photos of you from your phone, like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm shopping or whatever.
No.
Well, there's a bit of a disconnect there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one is not accomplishing your goal, which is to entice the client to make that inquiry. So that's an area where adding more photos aesthetically, maybe you think it looks better, whatever, but it's actually counterproductive to having a business oriented website, which is what I'm trying to build for everybody.
Right.
So these are the things that I try to, help my clients understand. These are also things that aren't really talked about as much kind of in the digital space, right? A lot of people in this world like to talk kind of techno mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to kind of know what you should really do.
Totally.
But the fundamentals, what I call the fundamentals of website design is basically like, what do you want this website to do?
Mm-hmm.
Is it to drive OnlyFans? If it's to do that, then the design would be different. Is it to drive inquiry? Is it to sell merch?
Right.
Whatever it is that you want it to do, that is priority number one. And the design should support that, no matter how good or bad you think it looks.
Yeah.
And that's always a bit of a conversation I have with my clients, because I want this, I want flowers, I want this. I'm like, yes, but I know that that's gonna not make your site as effective. You're losing money.
You're losing money, exactly. And that's a really good way of putting it too. Like, it's so important. And this goes into like UX, UI, or like user experience talk, which we're probably not going to cover, but this is a good like primer to that. But you need to think about like the experience that, say, potential clients are coming onto your website for. And like, you want to, as you mentioned earlier, get them to that booking page as soon as possible and making it as easy as possible. Because like, the longer that they linger on the site, they can't find like the link to go to the booking page, they're going to leave. And that's something called like bounce rate. And that's like what you don't want, because you want people to stay on your website, sure, navigate through your website, but also like, what is your end goal? You want to get that lead in, right? So anyways.
And also too, sending people to social media is dangerous, because social media is the biggest distraction engine in the world. Their business model is to take that person that you've sent them and keep that person on their website as long as possible. So
Mhm.
they're like, "Hey, you're looking at Sia, eating noodles. Here's some pictures of dogs and cats eating noodles, and here's this and this and this." And so, like, suddenly that client's like down this rabbit hole, looking at like animals eating noodles. Like, how did I get here? And they totally forgot that they're on your website. So
That's
you should think of social media as driving traffic from social media to your website. That's the goal of social media. It
mhm.
shouldn't be the other way around. And once you get them on the website, the goal is to get them to make that inquiry so that you can make that booking.
Right.
That's the core fundamentals of website design.
Here we go. So many good points here, and I could keep nerding out and talking about this, but given the time that we have, I'd love to chat about, like, if you are at that step in your career and you're like, I actually want to build a custom website, and I don't want to do it myself because I don't have any experience, or like I just want to take it to the pros. Like, what are some tips in terms of like finding a good website designer, and what the hell is a quote unquote good website designer?
Yeah, see, this is really difficult. This is really challenging because there's no qualification in this industry.
Right.
Anybody can create a website and say, "Yeah, I'm a designer." And like I showed you, I don't know if you want to show that lady set or not. Maybe only to your Patreon fans or whatever. But I mean, I shared with Sia this lady who is creating websites for sex workers, and in my opinion, her design is really out of date, and
It's
she
so bad.
shouldn't be charging money for any of that.
Yeah.
Um,
Bad.
on the other end of the spectrum, there's a site I think we can mention. It's called Honey Butter. Look up Honey Butter. I think it's honeybutter.com or something like that. There's a hyphen in the middle there. They create fully custom websites. And by that, I mean, custom typeface for everybody. And that's really time consuming,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Typography design is really time consuming. So the type of font that you have on that, they're really, and if you take a look at a lot of their clients' hourly rates, they're in the $1,000 to $2,000 an hour range.
Mhm.
So if
Mhm.
you're that, if you're in that range, then you could afford a place like that. My service, I think I kind of come more in the middle. Is that I do create a custom website, but I'm not so custom that I'm designing like a unique font just for you. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
start with a template and I modify that to fit your personality. But I think what it comes down to is it really kind of comes down to kind of personal taste.
Mhm.
If you like the look of that lady's GeoCity era websites, who am I to say that you shouldn't use her service?
Mhm.
It may not work. It may not be the best option for you in terms of your business and all that, unfortunately. And you will probably lose clients because of that, because of the aesthetic of it. But if you really like it, then
Go for
go
it.
for it.
Yeah.
So I think the best way to find a designer is look at their portfolio, see if you like what they're producing. And what I would do is email them some questions. And in regards to like, hey, how many revisions can we do? What
Mhm.
about this? Ask them a few different questions. And what you're looking for isn't necessarily their answers per se, but how they answer you. Do they take a week to answer you? Well,
Mhm.
why does it take so long to answer an email? That's too long, right?
Yeah.
Then you got to wonder, well, if I pay this person a deposit or whatever, how long is the process going to take? Is their answers professional?
Mhm.
Do they just come back, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, send me the money.
Right.
Well, then how professional do you think they're going to, if you run your business professionally, how professional are they going to be?
Mhm.
Are they send you an email like, yeah, just text me the stuff and I'll get on it.
Right.
Well, businesses don't text, right? You don't call the Marriott hotel to book a room and they're like, yeah, just text us when you get here. Like, right. So
It doesn't work that way.
yeah. So if you are trying to maintain a certain level of professionalism in your business, look for other businesses that do the same. And if you look at their social media, if they're posting on Twitter and Facebook and they've got like lots of emojis in their posts and other things like that, maybe they're not the most professional, business that you may not want to work with.
Yeah, like,
So
can I ask you, like, and what I think is important, because you mentioned a couple earlier, but like, what questions should you be asking the designer? I think that's really important to know. It's
I
like,
would ask them like first I would want to see their portfolio.
mhm,
Maybe they don't have it, but if I ask them like, hey, can you send me some examples? And then ask them for referrals. In this industry, referrals is super important.
Yes.
And I would ask for referrals and contact those clients and say, how was your experience with so and so, person?
Right.
And some are going to be great, some are going to be, I have clients who probably will say really negative things about me. But I think you just have to kind of determine, okay, well, how many of those negative things are being said, how many of those positive things are saying, and make your decision based on that. But that's really, I think. And then the other thing you could do is ask for a consultation call.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be long. Just say, hey, I'm kind of new to web design. I just wonder if I could take 15 minutes of your time to have a quick chat about, before I go ahead with this. If they're hesitant to do that, then I would be hesitant to book with them. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people in my industry don't like that, of course, because they're like, I don't have time to spend answering the phone all the time and all that. And yeah, I can see if you're that busy, maybe you could outsource that, or whatever. But I feel like in this industry, too many times people try to hide behind their website.
Right.
And it's not just small, it's tech. Like, good luck trying to get a hold of someone at Facebook or Uber or Google, right? The tech world likes to hide behind the technology.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're, don't forget, you're putting your personal information online, because, right, I get paid from my clients. I know their real names, I know their banking information, I can see their client inquiries and all that, right? So you're putting a lot of trust into this random person. Some of my clients, I blur their photos out, their face, all that. Well, they're sending me the original photo.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that that person is then not like reselling those on some bad porn
Yeah.
website, or you're giving the person your real information, right? So
Totally.
if they're not willing to take 10, 15 minutes to answer your questions, why would you want to give that person any money?
Yeah.
And
Red
no matter
flag.
how busy they say they are, they're not. They're not running Facebook, they're not running Instagram, they're not getting billions of inquiries. This website designed for sex workers is a very, very small industry, right? So it's not like we're like flowing with clients. We all wish we were, but so if they can't take 15 minutes or so just to take a quick phone call, I would be very cautious.
A little bit concerning.
Yeah, I think so. Or even maybe just, like quick chat or something online or something like that. But I
Yeah.
think the privacy in this industry is so important that I would be very cautious about handing any information or money over to someone that you can't at least have a phone call with.
Absolutely. It's so so important. I'm so glad you said that, cuz yeah, like it's really personal. It's really personal, and you put like a lot of your money into this as well, so you want it to work. But then you have to make sure that you are finding the right fit for someone who's going to make your website. And there's a lot of trust that kind of goes into that as well. So,
Well, not only too, a lot of my clients, like, this is the sex work is is part time, right? So they could have like
yeah.
a regular job, and
Yes.
so if they got exposed, they could lose their regular job. So it's really, really dangerous. So I would, like I said, like, I think the best option is just to try to get on a phone call with these people, because there's no short. If you search like escort web design, there's no shortage of the websites that come up. And honestly, most of them are garbage. Like, that's when I looked at that. Wow, this is what's being offered. Like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
So I would try to find someone local to your area, someone preferably kind of small business based. There's a lot of women that actually do it too. There was like
Yeah.
the number of women designers who kind of focus on this. I think they would be good to maybe contact and just say like, hey, can we have a quick chat, or a quick, type chat or a phone call or whatever? I just want to ask a few questions before we get started, and just kind of feel them out and see what they say, or ask for references.
Absolutely. Well, lastly, I want to chat about SEO, or search engine optimization, a bit of digital marketing in there as well as we close out the show. And this is a very big topic, but we'll do our best to kind of provide
Yeah, I'll
a
try
nice
to wrap it up as
overview.
quickly as possible. But like SEO and digital marketing is like, it's so hard to quantify, and like, because it's so vague. The whole industry, SEO is so vague, and the people in the industry love that because they can charge you a lot of money to do something that they don't know. I don't know, what are you doing? We're just doing SEO. What is that exactly? Well, it's SEO. Like, what? So it's the whole industry is kind of runs on this ambiguity to try to milk as much money out of clients as they can. But as we mentioned, kind of the top of the show, SEO is basically how well do you rank in search results. So someone searches for various keywords. Where does your website rank in those search results? And obviously, you want to try to rank as high as possible. Now, as you mentioned, the challenge with this particular industry is that any kind of certain keywords are dominated by porn sites that are massive, that you'll have no chance of ranking against. And also, too, is that Google itself doesn't really like this whole industry. So it's hard for you to use regular SEO strategies that you might use for like some regular small business to try to improve your search ranking. So it's a bit of a challenge within this particular industry. But one of the key things that you have to think about in terms of SEO and how Google looks at websites is one of the main thing that Google looks like on a website is the text. Google has these computer programs called spiders, and they basically crawl over the internet and they read everything on your website. And they say to read everything on your website, like, okay, well, this web page is about this because we've read all the content on it. So one of the ways to kind of optimize your website for SEO, they call it, is to add certain keywords to your website. So if you're an escort based in Vancouver, you want to have the word escort, Vancouver. Companion, something like that, like whatever you think your clients are going to be searching for on your website. Now, here's the tricky part is that Google doesn't really like those kind of words.
Yes.
So you have to kind of like get around that. So one way that you could do that is by, for example, creating a blog. And you write about sex worker rights or something like that on your blog. And in your blog, so let me see here. You were talking about like sex worker rights, and we had a discussion with Susie Fancy Pants, who is a Vancouver-based escort. Well, Vancouver-based escort is the keywords that you want to link back to your website.
Right.
So your blog is authoritative. It's not about escorting. It's about sex work in general, the legalization or criminalization or stigma or whatever it is. And then just in that blog, you use those certain keywords to link back to your website. It's not 100%, foolproof method, but it's one way to try to rank for those certain types of keywords.
Right.
And if you can get your friends and colleagues who also have websites to link back to your website, that's also a good strategy as well. Ideally, using kind of a similar strategy. Don't ask your friend who's got like a website and has got a huge long list of links to add your site to that. That strategy is long dead.
Right.
Ideally, you want like some website that is like authoritative on a specific topic like sex work or something like that, and they include a link to your site within there. So one way you could do that, like say you got like 10 friends who all got websites, noodle website, photography website, whatever, include a link to your website somewhere in the body of that text there. And if you could get, like, I know, like with some of my clients, like they're part of a Facebook group. It's got like 300 women in it, and they all like talk. So that could be a way to like say, hey, who's all got a website? Let's all start linking to each other. And that's one way to try to rank a little bit higher for specific keywords. Right. If everybody starts linking to your website for like Vancouver Escort, then Google's going to say, okay, well, this site must be important for this particular keyword. We're going to start to boost it up.
Right.
That's one way to get around it. The other thing that you should do, and this is getting a little bit technical, but is to optimize your URL, like the domain, like the .com. But even like for specific pages, like you may have a page for like rates. And so you have like something.com/rates, but that's a good opportunity to put like escort rates, escort Vancouver rates, or something like that, And then your images, you have a title, description, and for your images. So if you take a picture from your phone and you just upload that directly, it's going to have the title from your phone, which could be a bunch of numbers, 74321 or whatever. Like that doesn't tell Google anything, right? So you want to like change that to be like your name and ideally location and like black lingerie or something like that,
Right. Descriptive.
Because once again, the biggest search query that I see is your name. When clients are searching for your name, they see a review, so they're searching for a name. So you want to show Google, hey, all these images are for my name and all this content is for my name. So to optimize your website as much as possible so that anytime someone searches for your name and your name is unique and no one else has that same name, your content just dominates the whole top page of Google. It's impossible for someone else to kind of control that. And that's one way. I know it gets a bit technical. You can do that on Squarespace. You can do it on any of those websites. They all offer that kind of
Yes.
option to kind of boost your SEO ranking as much as possible.
Right. Right. Gosh, this is like such a big topic. I don't know how much more we can fit in here, but it's also really, really important though. But also time consuming. It can be time consuming.
Yeah, it can be time consuming, but I mean, if you do it properly from the beginning, it's not too bad. And like I said, like I think a lot of escorts, like they don't need to have a very big website. I think really they only need about 4 or 5 pages, right? Homepage, rates, gallery, etiquette, contact, maybe like an OnlyFans or something like that. So they don't actually need a very big website. So it's good to optimize that website from the beginning, from when you start. So optimize the title, the page titles, the URLs, images, the text, everything's optimized from the beginning. Then it's not hard to just kind of keep that up to date, change the text every now and then, update new photos, remove the old photos so you don't have this super massively long gallery or whatever. Then I think for a lot of them, the success of their business really comes in the offline component. And they should be looking at that, which I'm sure many of the successful ones are, but they should be looking at that and tracking that as much as they're tracking the inquiries from their website. So like client made an inquiry, client made an appointment, client showed up for the appointment, actually paid me. Okay, great. Can I get that client to repeat that appointment?
Right.
And how many of my clients are repeats? And how can I increase that ratio? And then of the ratio that are repeats, how can I extract more revenue from them?
Right.
And so all this stuff I think should be tracked. So I think the bulk of the business side of escorting actually is in the offline. The website is just one function. It's just to get that inquiry. And
Right.
then how you respond to that inquiry and how you handle that and all that will kind of determine your success or failure in the business. That's unfortunately something I can't help you with.
That's okay. I mean, like you have provided so much, like a plethora of information today, and I'm sure we can keep talking forever. And I'm in marketing too, so like I'm just a nerd about this kind of stuff. So I'm like, ooh, this is so interesting.
It's
But like,
interesting for me too, a little bit, because it's a challenging industry to try to market because you're limited in regards to regulation and tools and all that. So it's kind of interesting for me to see like how we can kind of get around all that to try to boost clients, rankings and popularity and all that.
definitely. Well, I hope we all found this episode to be informative, but there are a couple questions and they're all just kind of the same question in terms of like pricing, like what is a good price to pay for a website or how much do you charge kind of thing. So like what are your opinions on that?
Well, it goes back to what we talked about in terms of like the aesthetic and the design of the designer, that your person you hire, because there's no set pricing. The pricing is just like in the escort world. There's no set pricing. There's some women that charge $2,000 an hour. Some women charge $200 an hour. What's the difference, right? It just depends on what she feels that she can charge. So in this industry, it's the same thing. So I think that start with someone you think you can trust. Look at their portfolio, check their references. On my website you can see the women. You just contact them directly off the website if you want. So check their references, see if there's someone you can trust, and then find out their rate and see if it's within your budget. And then if it's not, then go find someone else. There's no shortage of people in this industry who can do this
Yeah.
work. There's very few that are good, but there's no shortage of people that think they're good. So it's just a matter of finding one that fits within your budget. And I think it wouldn't hurt to negotiate, because there's no fixed rate in this industry, right? There's no fixed rate. So negotiate and say, hey, I would really like to use a service. But keep in mind, like a lot of my clients, they have on their websites, like no negotiation with my rates, like don't even bother and all that. And I can understand that. And we kind of feel the same. Like, I don't want people to come up to me and say like, hey, I'll give you like, a really low ball amount. But
yeah,
I think if you kind of negotiate smartly and say, hey, can you give me a little bit of a break, or, I'm having a slow period or whatever, you never know what they might respond to. Just to be honest and kind of upfront about it.
Yeah.
You might be able to get a deal and
totally
get a nice website.
You never know until you ask. So
yeah.
Good sound advice. But Anthony, before I let you go, where can we find you?
My website is foxdigital.design.
Perfect.
So just go there and you can see everything, and you can contact me if you want me to help you with your website.
Yeah, definitely. And if you didn't hear the ad, unless you skipped the ad earlier, Anthony is offering 20% off for any of the Stripped by Sia listeners. So feel free to pop him a message on his website there where you can contact him, reach out, and maybe see what he can do for you. And super excited.
Yeah, just say that you in the contact form, just say you heard me on this podcast, and then I'm happy to work out a deal with you. Even if you're not a sex worker, I also do regular clients as well. So like whatever business that you're in, doesn't matter to me what business you're in. As long as you pay me, I don't care what business you're in.
Awesome. Well, Anthony, it was such a pleasure. Thank you for coming on today. I'm so glad we could finally make this happen. And yes, you will all have to wait and see a couple more weeks until the website is fully launched. I am working my little butt off by myself to do that. And for everyone else who is curious, it's Stripped by Sia on all major streaming platforms, so Apple, Spotify. I would love if you rated 5 stars on those platforms. If you are on Apple, write me a review. I've been getting a lot of great reviews lately, so thank you for those who've taken the time to write in. That really helps like discoverability and just helps people find the show. So I would love that. I'm also on Twitter, which I'm very active on there, Stripped by Sia, as well as Instagram, same thing, Stripped by Sia, and very soon strippedbysia.com, and lastly patreon.com/strippedbysia if you want to help support the podcast financially. So new episodes every single Sunday, and we'll see you all for another one next week. Bye. You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia. Music by Ted D. Graphic design by Maria Bellandarama, and photography by Ian Dabrin.